Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Roadmap to Rare. We're here to discuss real stories, real challenges, and research. In today's episode, as we continue the day that everything changed, we're here to talk to Amber Reynolds, who also has a child with Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome. Thanks, Amber.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of catch up a little bit and talk about our stories.
Yes.
So kind of along the lines as we go through this episode, we're going to start right when you guys were, once you've had Harper, your daughter, and that moment that you first kind of felt. I know my wife had that same had a moment of like that gut feeling. I was talking about like mom gut feelings. And kind of tell me through when you had that moment, that first gut feeling with Harper, your daughter.
Yeah. So, Harper is 14 now. But I will say the kind of beginning of our journey, but like kind of leading up to the gut, was I had a perfect pregnancy, perfect delivery. Everything was awesome. At our first week appointment, her pediatrician had told us that her head circumference was measuring in the 1 percentile. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And so she said it could mean that her brain was underdeveloped. I thought she was crazy. I went to a new pediatrician. I was like, how dare you tell me that about my
Gotta
daughter?
get a second opinion. I get it.
Went to a different doctor. They were like, let's kind of just watch her, track her the next couple months. She was delayed in all her milestones, sitting up. She has low tone. So around 6 months, though, is when I really was like that gut feeling. Because, I'm looking at my friends who have kids in similar ages. I'm like, wow, Harper is kind of behind. But I still thought she's just behind. It's nothing serious. And at 9 months was the real, okay, we should kind of do some testing. I think something's going on. But
Sure.
I felt very early on where doctors, even like my husband and like family, they're like, she's fine. It's nothing. And some doctors like it could be possibly nothing, but let's kind of do some genetic testing and MRI and let's check out her brain. So
Sure. I see, that's about the same time period we kind of had that moment of like, well, the crawling's not there. Gosh, we're reading to him a lot. He's not doing a lot of that. And, looking back now, like, oh, yeah, he should have been probably here, and here, and didn't know. So looking back at yourself, kind of yourself, what would you tell a version of yourself leading up to that appointment if you could go back? That the appointment that your doctor kind of said, hey, let's go check on some genetic testing.
I think it's all about like how doctors approach it, because like when her first doctor had said her brain was underdeveloped, I mean, it caught me totally off guard. And I was like, what are you talking about? Then the second doctor, we had to go through 3. The second doctor at 9 months told us, I think she has Down syndrome or Angelman syndrome. I'd heard of Down syndrome. I'd never heard of Angelman syndrome at the time. And it was the way she said it, kind of like she was for sure. It was one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
We had done blood work and that came back negative. And so that's when I was like, I'm going to a new doctor. And it was the way that pediatrician approached it. Like, you know what? Harper could totally be on her own track and she could be developing fine. Let's just see genetics and neurology just to double check, and we can cross it off the list if everything comes back fine. And I think it was his approach to that kind of helped. Like, okay, we'll make a neurology to cross that off the list, and we'll make genetics to cross it off the list.
Yeah.
So I think like for me, even though I knew in my gut, I think it's the way doctors kind of approach the situation to help you feel comfortable because it's scary. And, Harper's our one and only kid, of like to hear that something could be possibly wrong with your child.
Sure. So ours is our only 2. So it's one of those like, you guys have a little bit different being in Colorado. We're in Wyoming. So it was like, well, we can go 5 hours south or 3 hours north. It's not really like a hour here, hour there, but it was like, okay, we'll go to Billings. It's closer. And then the first round testing, well, nothing happened. Like we want to do genetic testing. When they had that, we had the same thing. Oh, he has autism and this and that, and very matter of fact. And we're like, maybe, but it just didn't seem. There are the characteristics that you see that people are like, oh, because of this. It's like, yeah, but there's this, and this that don't fall into that category. That I'm gonna have to disagree with there, Bob, on what we think. And then did you guys have to go through 1 round or 2 rounds of genetic testing?
1, and we did neurology, MRI at 11 months old, and we also did genetics at 11 months old. But Harper wasn't diagnosed until 5 years old. So even though we did the genetic testing, We didn't get an answer, which was really hard. But genetics did tell us, like, based on her facial features and based on like her development, that they're like, we know she has something with genetics. We just don't know what it is yet, which I didn't even
Sure.
understand that. I'm like, what do you mean you know, but you don't know?
Now looking back,
But
you're like, oh, now I
yeah,
get it.
I
Yeah.
understand. I'm in the rare syndrome world, but
Yeah.
so when she was 5 is when we finally got the diagnosis. And at the time, Harper was the 15th in the world. So there still wasn't even too much information at that
Sure.
time.
Yeah. I'm gonna say ours is more like are you sure? You sure you want to do the second round? I mean, you don't have to. It's going to cost you, and we might not find anything. We might not this. We might not that. And like just the pushback. My wife finally like, look, we're paying for it. Do it. So let's just kind of pretend that just happened, right? And then you wait for a little while. You get those results either emailed or mailed. Do you remember your feeling or how it felt to first time you heard Okur-Chung, or probably you're trying to read it through like we were, like, I think it's an Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome. Take me through, like, what did you feel like?
Well, we were actually at Harper's 5-year genetic. Every year we went to genetics, like, for a follow-up appointment. And like at her 2-year, her 3-year, 4 years, like, still nothing. Let's take some pictures of her fingers, of her eyes. Like, they would do different things. So when we went to her 5-year checkup, I just thought it was another genetics checkup. And when we sat down, my husband was actually still in the parking garage trying to park his car. He had dropped us off, but they had gotten us in like quickly. Usually you're in the waiting room. So we were sitting in the room and the doctor just comes right in and she's like, so we have a match. Harper has a syndrome. And I was like, wait, what? I was just shocked. And I was almost like, where's Brian? Because I need him to like hear all this. And she's like, yep, she's the 15th in the world. She has Okur-Chung Neurodevelopmental Syndrome. She told me about how Dr. Okur and Dr. Chung found, the syndrome, and that's why the name is. But I just had relief. I was like, for the 5 years of my daughter's life, I knew there was something going on. And, for the first couple years, I blamed myself. I was like, what did I do when I was pregnant? Is it because I had that turkey sandwich that one time? Because I worked
Right.
like everything that I did in my pregnancy, I blamed myself. So to know there was a name, it was relief. Like when Harper would be at the park and she was 3 years old and she obviously had behavior problems, she was delayed, she stems and flaps her hands, and people are looking at her at the park. And if a mom is like, oh, what does she have? I'm like, I don't know. It was really weird. So to finally say, oh, my daughter has this, was just the biggest relief. And then to find the community, even though it was small at the time, just to talk to one other parent to say, oh my gosh, me too, was incredible.
Yeah. I was gonna say we were 150th, so a couple years in between. That like,
Yeah.
oh, but I can only imagine being one of the first handful almost of like,
Yeah.
oh, that I feel like it's like that feeling of, oh, now I can call it this, but at the same time, what is that?
What does this mean? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I know my wife's she's English teacher, so she's very like deep dive. Okay, especially something that's, our son, like, oh, I wonder. So she's deep diving, looking up all that stuff. And we went back to Billings to have the person, because I think they called us to let us know they had the findings. And I think they might have emailed it to her, but then we went back for them to kind of talk through with a geneticist, and all the stuff that the lady had. She was like, oh, I've got these printed off. I've never seen it. We've never had a kid with this before. Here's this article. My wife's like, yep, I have that highlighted. Oh, here's this one I found. Yep, that one too. Like, I got questions. The lady was like, I might have answers. I don't know. I've never been through it, but it was really neat. And I know one of the neat things, well, I think it's a neat thing or great thing that the foundation does is, first thing we do, granted, we Google everything, but then next step, Facebook, right? Look through Facebook, what's out there, and finding the foundation has a Facebook page, which was great, right? And the family and friends is the open one, and there's another one that's closed just for the families, and having them like actually go, oh, hey, do you have the findings? And we're like, yeah. Well, can we look at them just to make sure? Well, it blew my mind. Like, oh yeah, we're going to talk to Dr. Okur and Dr. Chung, and like, live,
right?
And then they're gonna make sure, yep, that's the right one, and then they let us into the Facebook group. I thought it was a great, like, 2-factor authentication, right? Because anybody can say it, but it was really nice to be able to have that everyone in here has done that. They're here because they have a child. They're not trying to
Yeah.
scam or what,
Right.
this day and
Yeah.
age. But that was, okay. It was kind of neat. um,
Speaking of you saying like, oh, they're alive. When I first met Dr. Okur and Dr. Chung at the very first CSN K2A1 conference,
yeah.
it was like celebrities to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Dr. Okur.
Yeah, I do feel the same way. I mean, in Colorado, the big get together, that was pretty cool. Like, oh yeah, we can just talk to him for a minute. Like,
Right?
I don't even know where to start. Yeah, I feel like they're really down to earth and like, yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
This
Mhm.
is and fairly matter of fact when you're asking a question. Nope, this is what we've seen. This is what we want. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. But the fact they're still working on the syndrome and like researching it just means a lot. They could have just said, found the syndrome, okay, I'll figure it out. But it's like they're still, very
Yeah,
involved. I love.
yeah, definitely. On that same kind of edge, do you remember like the first time you actually met another family with a child that had Okur-Chung?
Yes. So that was our first conference, and that was a very emotional conference. I met Jennifer Sills, who's our president, and her daughter Jules, who is very similar to Harper. We're like, oh my gosh, like the first time in our life meeting someone who is similar. And then we had met Ava's family, and they were amazing. And Ava, even though she was like more verbal, Harper and her had a lot of similarities too. So just to see your child that you felt like was the one and only, some similarities was just so comforting. And then to meet the parents too, and to share stories with the parents, like, oh my gosh, my daughter does that too, was incredible. It's a weekend
Yeah,
I'll never forget.
yeah. It's kind of surreal. Like we were lucky enough to be close. I think for that the most not the most recent, but the one before that get together. So and just luckily enough, the Mellingers lived in Canada, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you guys are in Wyoming. Well, my parents have a house in Beulah. Beulah's about this big of a town." And
Oh,
so they're like, "Yeah, we go there over the summer," and we're like, "Yeah, it's like 45 minutes." This, Devil's Tower, the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That
okay.
national park is where Beulah's around. Like, oh yeah, we're like 45. But you guys want to get together
Wow.
and kind of see? So it was really interesting and like, oh my gosh, and being able to kind of to talk those milestones because their daughter was already older,
Yeah.
and so I mean,
Yeah.
Ronan was only, gosh, a year or two, maybe
Wow.
two, and like, oh, so this is my and granted, different genders, all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, like the growth patterns or what did you see, and
Mhm.
like, that feeling of like I can say what is going on, and they're like, oh yeah, we did that. You didn't have to go into more details. It was like, oh yeah, we've been through that,
Mhm.
and it was just neat to have like other parents like, we get you, we hear you.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. It's the best. It is. You just don't feel alone.
Yeah, for the longest time, like like you had said, like what did we do wrong? What we did, we read to him, we did this, we did that,
Yeah.
and then luckily here we were able to get into the children's development. We got a screening done on Ronan, and the children's developmental services. We did the screening through. We ended up getting home visits, which were really nice. I'm sure Colorado has something like that, but
Mhm.
you guys were. She was too old to be in the program at that
Yeah.
point, but it was nice to like, oh, okay, all right, and had an OT, a PT, a speech lady coming out
Mhm.
once or twice a month to help, which is, I can only imagine not getting any of that till like 5, really.
Right. Yeah.
Oh. um, so kind of that happened early. Now we're a little bit later. Um, Thinking in kind of the global area we are, if you could sit down with a parent that just received their diagnosis for their child this morning, what's one thing you would want them to know about the road ahead?
Oh my goodness. That could be kind of heavy, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like my first, even though it's been a very long and hard journey, I feel like the first thing I would say to that parent is like, A, it's going to be okay. B, that like I wouldn't change. I mean, yeah, if I could give a treatment or cure to help her for Harper to be more like successful, I would. But the joy that I see in Harper every day is beautiful, and I wouldn't change that. If so, it's like trying to find the joy of what your child presents. And again, it is long and it is hard, but I would definitely say on the medical side, like I would put them in all those, like what you said, PT, OT, speech, like try to get them services as early as possible, connect with other parents, go to the doctors, listen to your gut because, but also just trying to find the joy along the journey too, because it is a hard journey and it is a long journey, but finding the joy in that journey too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I know as a community, we always use like inch stones where, other kids might have milestones. Like, wow, he ran around the block. He rode his bike. Like, well, Ronan doesn't like to sit on a bike. He pushes them around. Like,
yeah.
But those little things where all of a sudden, they say their name for the first time. You're like, which is way longer than other kids have. But like, yeah, you said it. You know that name. Or I know we were reading a book right before we went to bed, and the license plate on this, it was like monster truck, and they were monsters that were trucks. But the license plate said Eric on the front, and we were looking. It was like, oh, that's Daddy's name, Eric. And he looked at it, he goes, Eric. I was like,
oh my gosh,
hey.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it was a while ago, but it was when I was like, oh my gosh, like, honey, come here. And I forget. Then I think my wife's Miranda, and it was like, I think she just said like, oh, Daddy's Eric and Mommy's Miranda. He goes, Miranda, like he didn't have it all, but like
that's
a really
awesome.
great attempt at it. And I was like, wow, and to do that around maybe parents that have kids that are neurotypical, like, yeah, he said your name, like, yeah, hey, this is we haven't had this before.
Right. Well, like Harper, she's nonverbal, so she didn't say like mama. She can only say like 5 words, but she didn't say mama or dada until she was like 8. And I mean, the first time I heard mama, I was like, because I thought she has a communication device and she says it on there, which still meant the world. But when her like mouth said it, I was like, oh my goodness. And she just recently, the last couple of years, like 2 years, started saying whoa, 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 which is I love you. And I'm like, she says I love you. She says whoa, whoa, whoa. And that's huge. And so like celebrating those inch stones and finding the joy along the journey.
Yeah. Because there's a lot in between those little inch. Then you hear that, like, and I think like 2 weekends ago, I think we're going through a book, or he was looking through a book, which was really cute. I mean, him looking through books instead of, playing around, like, oh, that's cool. You like looking through them. And he was looking through one, and he was listening to something on his iPad, and it was something about like, oh, Daddy loves you, and this and that. Like, it was kind of a fun one. I'm like, oh, I kind of heard it. And I was like, oh, I love you, buddy. Daddy, I love you. And I had to go get something downstairs, and I came up, and I swear I heard like Daddy, which is normally is like Daddy, he wants your attention. And I swear there were like 3 sounds in there, like I love you. I'm like, I'm the only one home. Oh, I swear, it's one time, but hey, in those moments of like, oh, I kind of, thank you, buddy. Right, that feeling of, here we are. And I know we had the good fortune to be able to go to Washington, D.C. and kind of learn about advocating and kind of on a higher level for our children. But parents with kids in the rare disease community can sometimes find that gear that we didn't know we had to be able to be the fiercest advocate for our children. Do you have any of those kind of moments where you can remember maybe the first time or one you were like, I'm so glad I did?
Oh gosh. Unfortunately in this world, like in this journey that we're on, I wish I could say like, yeah, you have to advocate for your child once and like, that's it. I feel like since Harper's literally been like little, I've been advocating for her every day, like to teachers, to community members, to Congress. It's just a nonstop battle and I'm not going to stop. And I just feel like, which I'm sure you're Papa Bear, but I get Mama Bear, like she is my world and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she's included in this world. She's loved in this world. She's protected. She's safe. And unfortunately, like I said, it's been since she was little. And like literally today, like when I get off this podcast, I'm emailing her teacher about a situation. It's something that we'll continue to always have to do, which is sad. Yeah. But yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here to be their voice and to continue to advocate for them. And I know
the voice of the voiceless in that kind of situation. I remember one time we were going to the park, and the sun was right in our eyes, and Ronan kind of had to kind of squint because it was looking at, the sun was in his eyes. And this one little girl was like, "Why are his eyes weird like that?" I just remember seeing my wife, who's about 7, 8 inches shorter than me, that I had to like pull. But no, it's okay, honey. And then her dad was like, "Oh, the sun's in his eyes. What do you mean?" Shh, it's okay. It's okay. It's just a kid. But yeah.
Well, Harper, she stems, so she also has autism, and so she stems, so she flaps her hands. But we call it her happy flap. So she flaps her hands when she's happy, and we love it. We're like, oh, she's in a good mood. But when she's out in public, she definitely gets like lots of stares. Kids like, because she also vocal stems, so she'll go like, and she's also like flapping her hands at the same time.
Sure.
But I just try to like educate kids. I'm like, if you have any questions, you can ask me, and I'll say like, my daughter has a rare syndrome. She's nonverbal. She can hear you. She can understand you. If you want to talk to her, she would love to have a conversation with you with her talker. So I think it's just like educating, and continue to educate. And I think for all people, we should encourage our kids to ask questions, and I think that's how they learn and they accept and include.
Yeah. I think I don't know if you ever watched Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
Love Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
And the one where he's not baiting the owner of the soccer club, but they're playing darts.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
Right, he's throwing them right-handed, and they're going okay. And then finally, that his phrase of like, "Be curious, not judgmental," like that's a great sentence to kind of live everything by. Like, be curious. If you were curious, you would have known I was a state champion 3 years in a row in darts, and if they're left-handed, thunk, it's in the middle. Like, oh.
Yeah. But seriously, I think it's such a for adults, for kids, for everyone. Yeah, be curious and not judgmental, and ask questions, and and always say hi. I feel like if we're walking the parking lot or if we're at the park, like kids will just like stare at Harper as she walks by, like just wave hi. A simple hi goes a long way. Yeah.
Just be nice.
Yes.
In that kind of a sense. Like, oh, hey. You don't have to be best friends, but you can wave hi and just be the person there. So kind of closing out our conversation today, in the rare disease world, we kind of talked about it before with those inch stones at a milestone. But what was like a small milestone, maybe something that not everybody would hooray about, but it happened with Harper that made you guys feel like you were winning the lottery with her? Like, oh my gosh, yes.
Oh. Well, I kind of have two. Like, one is more of a bigger picture, broader, but we always say that Harper sees the world in rose-colored glasses. She doesn't see anyone for what they're wearing or what status they have or what color or what size. It's just everyone is a joy for her to meet, and every day is joyful. She loves going on the bus every day. She loves going to school to see her friends. She thinks therapy is the best thing ever. Like, everything is joy, and I just want to look through those rose-colored glasses alongside her. And she teaches my husband and I to not fret about the small things and just to be joyful.
We can be a little cynical in our old age.
Our blessings every day. And so that's like where I feel like we won the lottery, and that like, wow, we're so lucky to have a daughter who sees the world like that. But like a milestone that I feel like Harper has accomplished and continues to do is she's a skier. We live in Colorado. She skis for the Special Olympics. The girl is fast. She is good. I can't keep up with her. Like, where I'm almost like my husband has to. It's so good, and she loves it. And I feel like that's huge. I would never think when Harper was learning to walk when she was little wearing AFOs, on her feet, that with low muscle tone, that she would ever be skiing down a mountain, and now on a team, and she's on the intermediate team. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I usually catch a face full of snow. I've never learned how to like turn. So I'm like, oh, that's orange fence. That means it's a sheer drop. I should just tuck and roll and just
you need Harper to
yard
teach
sail.
you.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. So last question before we kind of close up here, but when people hear your family's story with Harper from this podcast, what's one thing you hope they'll walk away with?
I think it's to find the joy in the little things of our children and to celebrate those, and to never stop advocating. Like, I wish I could say like it's just one time, but it's like continue being your child's voice. Just continue being your child's voice and finding the joy in the little things.
I think it's for everybody, really, in any situation.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Find the joy that you can, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard sometimes, but every once in a
Mhm.
while you get that little glimmer, or it's a hard day, and all of a sudden they bring up their book for you to read, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, buddy, I can read for you,
Exactly.
whatever book it is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amber. I really appreciated you coming on the podcast, talking about your story. And it's always good to kind of catch up and go
Yes,
through
thank you.
stuff that maybe we hadn't talked about before, even as we've
Mhm.
been to different places and advocated here and there. But we appreciate you being on Roadmap to Rare. And don't forget, from listening, like and subscribe wherever you guys listen to your podcasts, and stay tuned for episode 3.
Ooh, thank you, Eric.